Wonderful to see you again.
How are you, Inu?
Good, good, good. How
You're
are
in
you?
Japan?
Yeah,
You're in
I'm in
Japan?
Japan. Michael, I'm so excited that the Chinese version of your book is coming out, and I, of course, still have the original one, all with my marks and underlines from reading it now over a year ago. And so excited that the Chinese version will be coming out, so there's a broader audience who would have access to your work. And then thank you so much for making time to do this talk so that people can learn from the author why you wrote the book, and your message to whoever that will read it. Yeah, so I had a chance, of course, to reread the book now with this interview. I think I was thinking what this book is about. It's almost a very detailed and logical manual for seeking happiness. Is it how you intend it to be?
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
People are saying it gives techniques versus
yeah,
the earlier books give you an understanding why you want to do this. This gets right down to where the rubber hits the road.
yeah, absolutely. So that I think the book actually has 8 parts. But as a reader, the way I access it, I think there are 3 parts, the 3 bigger blocks. The first block is almost understanding who is self, like how our experience come about. And then the second part is about, because you use the word 3 arenas, so there are 3 stages where things happen. So you actually went to a lot of depth in explaining what is the number 1 outside world, what's number 2 the thoughts, and what's number 3 emotion and feelings. And then the third part, I think, is after you have this sort of understanding and almost anatomy analysis of all the 3 arenas, and how do you deal with it? What do you do with it? And then it ended with, and I like it how you have both low-hanging fruits, where it's very easy things you could do, but also like once you grab those low-hanging fruits, what are the I think the last chapter is beautifully said, or a section called live in the world but not of it. So like the deeper connection you can have once you start I guess internalizing and using those techniques. So that's how I access the book. I think today, since it's such a rare chance for people to hear from you, I mean, I of course offered my view as a reader, but since we have a chance to talk to you, I want you to also help us walk through those 3 parts, if okay with you. So the starting with this whole thing about self, this awareness of self, you use this beautiful analogy of looking at the mirror and seeing the image in front of us, seeing that as ourselves. What are you trying to have the reader understand by talking about different layers of self?
Yes. Well, the essence of the entire book and of all my books is I ask a person, are you in there? I've never had anybody say no. Okay. Are you in there? But I then ask, who are you that's in there? You have to peel back the layers of the onion. Okay. Because most people are going to say, I'm a 26-year-old woman that lives in Chicago or Tokyo. All right. And married or not married, or I was married, now I'm not. And they're just describing, in essence, they're describing the experiences they've had. Who had those experiences? Right? If you didn't have those experiences, you would still be in there. You would just have had different experiences. So that's a very quick way to come back to do you even know who you are? Right? Why are you describing yourself as the experiences you had? It's not true that you're a 26-year-old woman. Tomorrow, next year, you'll be 27, 28. So what happened to 26? Like, we just use these words without even contemplating or paying attention. All right. So one way to start is to sit there and say, look in the mirror. What do you see? What you see is a reflection of your body. You don't see you. You don't see you is in there, right? It's you in there looking out through your eyes, excuse me, and seeing a reflection of the body. Were you in there yesterday? If you looked in the mirror yesterday, was it the same you? What about 5 years ago? You were in there, but the body you looked at in the reflection was different. You are seeing a different body, but it's still you. Okay. And you work your way back to understanding, what about when you were 10 years old? Did you ever look in the mirror? It didn't look like it looks now. And when you're 75, it's not going to look like it looks now, but it will still be you looking. You've been in there the entire time, haven't you? And everybody says, yeah, I guess so. Okay. And you start understanding that that's who you are. You're not your body. Your body goes through changes all the time. You're the one that's aware of the changes. You're the one that looks at the body in the mirror. All right. You're not your mind. Why? Your thoughts change all the time. When you were 10 years old, you had thoughts. Can you remember some of the thoughts? Are you aware of those thoughts? Yes. Who is? And you just keep working your way back to understand you in there are the conscious being that is aware that you are receiving the outside world through your senses. You're noticing thoughts going on in your mind. Try to stop them. And you'll say, I tried to, but I can't. They keep going anyways. Who is in there trying to stop the thoughts if they are the thoughts? You're obviously not the thoughts. You're the one in there noticing they won't shut up. Then people say, my mind's driving me crazy. I ask a very simple question. How do you know? How do you know your mind's driving you crazy? They get mad at me. They would get mad at me if I don't ever do that one-on-one. But they would just sit there and say, because I'm in here. Good. That's wonderful. So you're not crazy. You're watching thoughts that are crazy, right? Oh my God, since he left me, my heart is just broken. Or when I met this person, my heart burst open. It was so beautiful. Who's noticing that? How do you know your heart closed? How do you know it open? So that's your question, which is the first part, and all the essence of spirituality is, who is in there? Because you in there don't have an age. You looked in the mirror, no matter what age it was. You in there have had very different thoughts all the time throughout your life. In fact, from moment to moment, you have different thoughts, all right? You think you love somebody, you find out somebody tells you, did you know that they killed somebody? All of a sudden, you don't love them so much anymore. It can change it. I can change in a billionth of a second, can't it? But it's still you who's noticing this change. Okay.
Yeah.
And eventually you come back to realizing you are in there. You've always been in there. You have no age. I'm sorry to tell you, you have no gender. Okay. You can see one when you look in the mirror, and your thoughts may certainly probably do, you know, talk like one, and your emotions may be like one, right? But who's noticing it has no age, has no gender. It's just pure awareness, consciousness. Then the question becomes, what are you aware of? What's your relationship to what you're aware of? Once you get back there, some very interesting questions come up, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my
And
answer.
there's a sentence from your book that says, you are the subject, all the rest are objects of consciousness.
That's right.
Yeah, I think people can probably, it's easier to understand because you also use, like a lot of common life objects. Like, of course, I know this is my cup. Okay, this is not really my cup. It's a cup, it's a car, it's a house. And that probably easier cognitively to understand. Okay, this is not me. My cup is not me. My house is not me. But when it gets to my body, like as you said, I'm a 46-year-old woman living in Tokyo. I have white hair starting from yesterday or something like that. It's harder to differentiate, right? Because it's we think they're different. Okay, my cup, I know this is external, but my skin, oh no, this is me. So this is really difficult. Like, any advice you have for differentiating, kind of dissociating that? Because I think with so much of our pain are coming from, right, as you precisely said, equaling ourselves to our body, because that's a lot of our judgment, our self-awareness, our confidence comes from the body we live in.
Believe it or not, everything you're saying is true, but you identify more with your mind and your ego than you do with your body. I always use the example of Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. You know those stories, right? These are highly educated, very high-class people. Somehow somebody insulted somebody. I don't know the story that much, right? And they literally stood back to back, took 10 steps, turned around with a musket, and shot each other in the face. That is not identifying with your body. That is identifying with your ego. You understand that? You have insulted me, sir. Right? Come kill me. I'd rather die. I'd rather die than be insulted. Notice, right? You're not really identifying that much with your body as you are with your ego. But your ego identifies with your body. I'm a good-looking 23-year-old man or something like that, right? And so, but what happens when you start getting gray hair? You dye it. You pull them out when they start showing up. You get facelifts. You do all kinds of things because you have a concept of what you want your body to look like. That means you're not your body because your body looks the way it looks, but your ego wants it to look different. Okay?
Right.
I always tell the story that sometimes you all have conferences, okay? And people, very famous speakers, right? And they'll show the pictures, little thumbnails of the people. Well, I know some of these people. And the picture, they haven't looked like that for 40 years. That's the picture they turn in. You follow me? Okay? It's just ego identifying itself. Okay? There's a difference between identifying yourself with something and being something. Like the reason you don't identify with your car is because it's not always there. You don't identify with your coffee cup, it's not always there, right? You identify much more with your child than you do with your car and your coffee cup. But that child's body is no more you than the coffee cup or the thing, right? It's a question of identification. Consciousness can focus on things, or it can be more broad. I can focus on one book, or I can look at the whole room. I can look at your face, or I can pull back and notice, hey, there's other things going on besides my looking at it, right? So consciousness focuses on objects of consciousness, and if it stays focused on it, it identifies with it. This is what first it's what I'm looking at, then it's who I am. You understand that? It just identifies it. The ego doesn't know who it is. That's why psychology calls it self-concept. It's not who you are, it's your concept of who you are. Okay? So if you stay with something long enough, it becomes part of your self-concept. And your body you have stayed with very long. Although it's confusing to me because the darn thing keeps changing. So I don't know how you can say it's the same because it changes every 5 years. It looks totally different. Every 10 years, something is different, right? And that's why you have trouble when you get older.
Yeah.
Because you don't want your body to look like that. So you're not really identified with your body. You're identified with your concept of your body, your ego.
Yeah.
Right? So I would agree that the image of the body is part of the ego.
Yeah.
Notice it's part of the mind. It's part of what you made up in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed. That's why the minds, as you said, it's so fascinating. Exactly, because we have, almost there's a spectrum of identification, right? So there are easier ones. Okay, it's a mug or it's a car, and there's a harder ones like my child, and the even harder ones my own body, and then there's even harder ones my mind, like my idea, my concept. Yeah, and then this is almost like a sliding ingredient of how difficult it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are some people identify more with their car than others. Somebody's a real car enthusiast and they have a Ferrari, right? You understand that? Don't touch my car. Don't go over there. I have a Ferrari, right? Because you made it part of your ego. You made it part of defining who you are as opposed to an object outside. Somebody else just has a junker. They don't think anything about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So like you said, there's a spectrum. And the question becomes, are you identifying yourself, defining yourself by an object? If you define yourself by the object, then you act, you behave as if it's you. This is my wife. This is my wife. Stop dancing with her. No, you've talked too long on the phone. People get like that, don't they? Right? Because you identify, she's not you. Your husband's not you. Your wife's not you. You know that, right? But your ego owned it, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, as you say, it's so interesting because as you know, I'm in Japan now, and then there are so many cultural things that I, as a foreigner, and I intend to stay so, like, because I always feel like when I come to the new culture, when you stay on the margin, it allow you to observe the things that's laughable. Like, for example, in Japan, everything's very crammed, like there's very little space. So if I have an apartment that's over 100 square meters, which is like, 1,000 square feet, then I'm rich. Okay. Then that means I have status and all that. Of course, it comes with, do you have a parking spot for your car? And do you have all the things came. But, like, remind me to you, like if I go to Florida, you have, all this vast land and then you have, but when you are in this cultural context, somehow it becomes a huge sense of identification. Like, you know, like the specific size of your bedroom, like when you put it out there, it becomes a huge deal. And then like, it's, of course, I understand when you're in the culture, that's what it is. But as you say, and then sometimes it gave me, I think your book mentioned that too. It's basically the kind of detachment. I'm thankful because I'm not a Japanese. I'm not here to compete or join that game. I can see, well, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's all very small. Like, but like when you're in there, you're so easily kind of trapped into that comparison or that identification.
The ego does that. So that's why notice we just went from body to mind.
Yeah.
It's really not your body. It's what your mind thinks about your body. It's not your car. It's what your mind thinks of. So it all comes down to this model you built inside your head of what you want to define yourself as. If you are defining yourself as something, I want to know who the you who's doing it. I don't care what you defined yourself as. I want to know who did it and why they did it.
Yeah.
Right? You are the one who's in there. Why do you have to define yourself as something else?
Yeah.
Based on the outside. Right? That's the question you asked, right? So that's that whole topic about the outside world and your relationship to it.
Exactly. And that links to then the second, I call the second sort of parts of your book where you talk about the three arenas, right? So you're saying like at the end of the day, that what matters is our inner experience. Like, and then you said it very beautiful. I remember you have this example saying like, you know, if I wanted a wedding in Maui, okay, so I wanted my wedding to look like this, my house to look like that, and then my dress to look like that, because I think if it looks like that, I'm happy. Right. But I think you asked this very, you know, almost a funny question. Like, see, if the happiness is what you're after, why do you have to go through all that? Why don't you just be happy? Why do you have to spend the money to go to Maui to spend that money on your dress? But I guess that's exactly why you talk about the three arena, because we sometimes attach it to the external world, and then external world. And the second one, you talk about thoughts and then emotions. And those are the very complex and interconnected world, or almost a mess that we're in internally. Yeah, can you say a bit more how you differentiate the three arenas, like how we should kind of see ourselves in them?
Right. Well, what the purpose of Living Untethered, all the books, is that you stop identifying yourself with that which you're not and identify yourself with that which you are. And that's what's called liberation. That's spiritual liberation. I'll jump to the end of the beginning, right? You are in there. You're a very great being. You who's in there, not anything you did, not what your body looks like, not what your mind's thinking, not what your emotions are. Okay? You who's experiencing that is what Christ talked about, what Buddha talked about, what all the Lao Tzu, all the great ones talked about, the fact that the self, the Atman, the indwelling being is very, very great. Well, then why don't I feel great? Because you're distracted. That's the key word. Your consciousness can get distracted by things, can't it? All right? Things distracted, a noise, this. Somebody says something, you get distracted by it. Thoughts can distract you. Emotions sure as heck distract you. What does that mean, distract you? They pull your consciousness away from where it was to what they are. That's what distraction, isn't it? I used to be doing this, but I got distracted. Okay? So the consciousness, which again, I'm going to reiterate, we'll do it at the end, is the most beautiful thing in the whole universe. You are the most beautiful thing in the whole universe, period. You're filled with love. You're filled with ecstasy. Well, why don't I feel that? Because you're distracted by those three things you said. You're distracted by the outside world coming in, a loud noise, a this, a that. Somebody said something, all right? You're distracted by your own thoughts, and you're sure as heck distracted by your emotions. So by the time the three-ring circus captures your consciousness, you stay distracted your entire life. It's like they're about ADHD, right? That those are just extreme cases that I can't even go to school properly. I can't read a book. I get distracted. We're all distracted from the self, from the seat of consciousness. We are distracted into what comes in from the outside world, distracts us. The thoughts distract us, and the emotions distract us. All right. So we can go as deep as you want into any of those. I go very deep into what. See, to me, once you understand you're being distracted by it, well, what is it? What is the outside world? Where did it come from? Why am I bothering to be distracted by it? All right. What are thoughts? What are thoughts? Where do they come from? Why are they the way they are? What are emotions? Literally, what are they? Not my emotions are love or hate. What are they made of? Where do they come from? Why are they there? Go right down to the bottom line of the science, deep metaphysics or science, right? Of what's going on to help you detach yourself from saying, like, for example, I tell you that science has showed you that every single thing you look at in this world is atoms. You know that, you've learned that, but you don't live it. You understand that? They're just atoms. They're just billions and billions of atoms floating around through empty space. How can that bother you? How can you get bothered? Right? I mean, I ask some deep questions, but I always put in the book, but talk to you with friends, right? If you look at a periodic table, you've certainly seen a periodic table, right?
Yeah.
108 elements, whatever it is, right? Which ones are female and which ones are male? They're just the same, right? Then where did this all come from? You get to ask that question. Talking about being real, talking about real truth. The real truth, every science will tell you, it's all atoms. And they don't just tell you it's atoms, right? They say it's electron, neutrons, and protons. Well, they sure as heck don't seem so interesting. And they're all exactly the same. Every electron, every neutron, every proton. So what are you like and what are you not like? I'm daring people to dare to look past themselves at a truth that is real truth, right? And ultimately you get down to quantum physics that says there's nothing there. It's just a Einstein equals MC squared.
Vibrations and energy.
It's just a field of energy. It's a field of energy that out of it pops some little subatomic particles, quark, leptons, bosons, and then those have qualities of electromagnetism. And they put themselves together, and that's all that's happening here, which is nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So are you willing to look at it from truth? One thing I didn't put in the book, but I teach it a lot sometimes, all the way back. All right. If I'm holding water in my hand, all right, it's a multiple choice question. I'm asking you, I have water in my hand. That's A, water in my hand. B, I have H2O molecules in my hand. C, I have hydrogen and oxygen atoms in my hand. D, I have electron, neutron, and protons in my hand. E, I have quarks, leptons, and bosons. F, I have the quantum field in my hand. Which one's right?
All of them.
That's right. Simultaneously.
Yeah.
They're all right at the same time. That's what's meant in the deep spiritual teachings between unmanifest and manifest. That God is both unmanifest and manifest at the same time. All right. So if I'm holding my hand, it's really nothing and water. You understand that? It didn't stop. It didn't stop being the quantum field because it's water.
Right.
Did it? All right.
Yeah.
So that's how I dare people. I dare you. You're intelligent people. You've been to school. You don't have to be a genius to understand what I just said, right? Are you willing to dare to look past the absurdity that your mind is doing to see truth? Because that's the truth, and it will free you.
Yeah.
Right? And you shall know the truth will set you free. That will free you right away. You just say to your mind, you got a scratch on your new car. No, there's just a bunch of atoms that moves around. You're going to get upset about it? You understand that? And so that's how I paint the outside world. And the other way that I paint it, in this book, I go into great detail. I am impressed that people are doing so well with this book, right? Because it starts with there's no universe and it builds the universe. And one thing it dares you to say is you're sitting on a tiny little planet, 1.3 million Earths from inside the sun. 1.3 million Earths from inside the sun, and there's 300 billion stars in your galaxy. What's bothering you? It looks absurd. You understand that? Doesn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I love your laugh. We should all laugh. Okay. Not to mention, you're only going to be here for a very short period of time, 89 to 100 years. It's been here for 4.5 billion years. The Earth.
Yeah.
What's bothering you? I want you talk about happiness. You are the happiest thing that will ever live if you let yourself be.
Yeah.
But you won't, because you said I can only be happy if things are exactly the way. No, I can only be happy if I made up things and then I want them to be that way. I made up what I want. I made up what I want. Okay.
You said, you said
never be happy.
Yeah. Well, what's bothering me is the scratching on my car that bothers me.
Everything. Or he's oh my God, I burped in public. Oh my God, I have a piece of spinach in my tooth. How long was it there? Who saw it? Hello.
have to tell you this because again, because you're in Japan and my kids are very loud. This is not socially acceptable, okay? And then so my second one, who's 11, came back home and told me, Mom, I have to tell you something. It's a big deal. I said, what happened? I said, I burped in the subway. And it's so loud, and everybody looked at me. I was like, "Wow, how loud it is!" Okay, he did it again, and we're all having a big laugh. But that's exactly what it is. Like, well, everybody was so nervous. It's so interesting when you're in this cultural environment. Like, you know, they collectively decided that's not okay. I was like, "Don't you burp? Don't you like pass gas?" But it became a social taboo, and then we are so attached to it, and became something that we can have an emotional reaction to, right?
That's all part that now do you know that in India it is considered polite to burp after the meal at the table? That means that you tell your host that you enjoy the meal. There you go. Cultural.
There you go. I'll tell them next time, say you're Indian.
So bottom line is there is an outside world. It does its thing. It's always done its thing. Like I said, just keep remembering. If you want to be free, remember 1.3 million Earths inside the sun. How much of the Earth do you take up at any given moment? It's a spot in the middle of freaking nowheres, right? And the Earth is nothing. And you're just sitting there letting your mind destroy your life. So now we move from the physical into, okay, we understand the physical, it's there, but why is it bothering you? All right. It's bothering you because you have concepts, views, opinions, preferences, hopes, dreams inside your mind. And if what's happening out there doesn't match what you have in there, you're in trouble. You're miserable. If it does match, you're just as much trouble. You go running off with somebody. You lose your center. Right? You understand that, right? So there is a state in which you can reside inside in a state of peace, in a state of joy, in a state of well-being. All right. It's called a transcendent state. It's not fake. You're not sitting there suppressing your thoughts. You're understanding everything so deeply that you're right. Okay, I burped. I have a self-concept, super ego, if you will, that says you don't burp in public. Isn't that funny? What? That there's this self-concept of mine that people are looking at me, but you're out of it. You're not in it. You think it's, isn't that cute? Isn't that cute? Look at that. All right. It doesn't bother you. That's what I want you to get.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother you. You're free. You're free to be loved. You're free to express yourself. You're free to live the rest of your life, enjoying every moment of it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and I think that you touch it so beautifully. We move from the outside world to the second circus, which is the thought, and then the concept and all that. I think you probably said in your book too, but like what I remember from what you're writing is almost the feeling you left on me is that we actually spend a lot of effort building this very intricate maze in our mind, and then we expect, as you say, the outside world, how people behave, how to match that maze.
That's very funny.
And if they don't match, I'm upset. Like, why don't you read my mind, right? So that's what we say. Like, why? Like, I've you've known me for 20 years or 30 years. You still don't understand me. Like, you still don't know how to navigate that maze.
That's right. That's right.
Right. That's exactly so. Like,
it's wonderful.
Yeah, isn't it how I guess that's what thoughts and concepts, right? I think that's what you're trying to say.
So let's look at it.
Yeah.
Quickly, because we're going to run out of time. Where do your thoughts come from? Right? Psychology says you are the sum of your learned experiences. Now, they say man is the sum of learned experiences. No, you're the consciousness aware that the mind, the psyche, is the sum of your learned experiences. And it is. If you had different experiences, it likes different things. It wants different things. You know what I mean? Even in moment to moment, one experience changes your whole idea of what you want and what you don't want. You understand that? Well, your whole life, that's what's been happening. You've been taking in all these experiences, picking and choosing, and building a self-concept of what you like and what you don't like. All right? And you expect, like you just said, you expect that the moments unfolding in front of you will match what you want. And you literally say, why can't I have what I want? Well, all right. Well, I like to look because you're very intelligent. You understand it. So now we know where your concepts and views and opinions and preferences came from. The sum of your learned experiences. Where did the moment in front of you come from? It doesn't know the sum of your learned experiences. It didn't have those experiences, right? If you want to know where the moment in front of you came from, study science. Why is it raining on my birthday? Go ask a meteorologist, because it doesn't know it's your birthday. You understand that? So the outside world is the sum of its learned experiences. Go slow. Isn't it
Yes.
true that
Yep.
everything that it unfolds is because of what unfolded before it? Cause and
Right.
effect, right?
Yep.
So the outside world is the sum of its learned experiences. Your inside world is some of your learned experiences. They will never match. If they match, it's luck for a moment. Why should they match? You
Yeah.
understand that?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that defines the human predicament. That you are in there thinking it's supposed to be the way you want. And if it's not, something's wrong. Okay? Well, so
Yeah.
is everybody else. So that's why there are wars. That's why there's so much fighting and everything. Because we
Yeah.
all had different experiences. Therefore, the concepts and views and opinions we have are different, right? And the outside world couldn't care less about your experiences. It's busy going about the sum of its learned experiences.
Right.
That's very, very deep, right?
Yeah.
In other words, if somebody says to me, why can't it be the way I want? You ready? Because it's not supposed to be. It's not. It's not supposed to be the way you want. It's supposed to be the way it is because all the factors that made it be that way.
Yeah, yeah. And that leads to what you were saying the nature of human predicament is when you also quoted Buddha says life is suffering, and that is the nature of the suffering, right? Because we hope
That's right.
we expect it to
That's
match.
right.
It doesn't
That's
match.
right. That's right. That's why he said all life is suffering. And
Yeah.
but you go further, all right? It's beautiful. Buddha's very beautiful. He said all life is suffering. That doesn't mean he's negative. It's the truth, all right? But then he said the cause of suffering. He didn't say old age. He didn't say sickness. He didn't say greed and avarice and evil, or he didn't say anything like that. He said there's just one cause of all suffering. Whoa, right? Preference. He called it
Yeah.
desire, but it's also what is the desire? That you have a
Yeah.
preference, right? And you just said that because you have in your mind the way you want things to be, you're going to suffer. If you didn't mind getting old, if you thought it was neat, right? That you got lines in your face and you look different and it's fun, right? Okay, then you wouldn't mind getting old. If you don't mind dying, if you don't have in your mind, I have a bucket list of things I want to happen before I die. My question I asked them with a bucket list is, wait a minute, you've been alive for 90 years. Why are there a handful of things that you think will make a difference? Well, what have you been doing for 90 years? It's hilarious, right? It's just what they're basically saying is, right, I'm not okay. And these things I haven't done yet, maybe they'll make me okay.
Yeah.
You understand that? All right.
Exactly.
How about Buddha would sit there and say, instead of having preferences and desires, why don't you say, hey, I wonder what's going to happen when I die? It's a great mystery. I'll find out. I get to find out whether I'm still there after I die, right? It should be exciting. Don't rush it. Don't do it yourself, all right? But it's exciting to understand that all of life is exciting if
Yeah.
you don't define preferences
Yeah.
of what you think needs to happen to make you be okay, you're okay all the time. Then people say to me, but why would you do anything? Because when you're filled with love and you're filled with inspiration and you're filled with joy and creativity, you want to express. You're not doing things in this world to be okay. You're doing it because you are okay. And now you're bringing all that love and all that joy and all that creativity every moment, every second of your life into every moment of your life. And
Yeah.
that's what everybody should be living, can be living, not should, can. Everyone can live that way, but
Yeah.
not while they're distracted, so distracted by these thought patterns that they built and the emotion patterns accordingly, right? And so I know you understand that, but we're getting down to
Yeah.
the core that this is what Living Untethered is about.
Right. So
Painting that picture and how to
basically,
get out.
exactly, using the previous analogies, like because you spend so much effort, the preference is the maze or the wall you built. So basically, the way to get rid of suffering is to demolish the wall, right? It's like there's no more maze, then everything just flows. You don't block it anymore. And I think that basically is what your last teaching is about. Acceptance is about what's accepting, because people tend to think accepting as something very negative or passive, as saying that, okay, now I just accept, things, people are bad to me, I just say yes to it. But no, right? I think when you're saying accepting, it's much more profound than that. And
Yes,
can I pass
yes.
on to you to say what do you mean by accepting?
I define acceptance All right. Surrender is acceptance, right? I think in the book I said, right? Surrender, right, is acceptance of reality, right? If somebody said something mean to you, right, that actually happened. You can't say it didn't happen. If it didn't happen, it's not a problem, right? It happened. You have to start by accepting the reality that it happened. Doesn't mean you don't deal with it. Acceptance doesn't mean I don't deal with what happened. It means I accept that it happened. What's the alternative? You're saying that. That's where people get it wrong. They think acceptance is passive. Acceptance is not passive at all. You have to be very, very brave to say, you did literally say that to me. Somebody did scratch my car. No, yes, they did. Otherwise, we're not talking about it. You understand that? Things did happen. You have to accept that so that then you're able to deal with them. If you can't accept it, you can't deal with it. People who sit there and say, I can't handle this happen. All right, I can't handle this. Right? Well, they just admitted they can't handle it. Well, then they're the last person in the world that should be in the situation because they can't handle it. If you can't handle the sight of blood, I don't want you to be the one that pulls up to my car accident because you can't handle the sight of blood. You're not going to be able to help me. If you can't handle it, somebody says something you don't like, I can't handle you said that, right? Then you're of no use. You're of no use. You have to sit there and say, okay, this got said. It's not comfortable to me, but I accept that also. It's real. Reality is an amazing thing, right? So you said this. I feel uncomfortable, but I'm centered. I stayed centered. I can handle that you said it because you did. I can handle I feel uncomfortable because that's how my ego feels. Now what? Now I'm the person who should be dealing with it because I can still see clearly what's the best way to deal with this. Because your attempt to make it not have happened, let me repeat that. Your attempt to make it not have happened is absurd. It did happen. That's acceptance.
I love what you say, acceptance is brave. Yeah,
It's very brave.
Yes, yeah. So I think it's the bravest thing because it's we or accepting and also saying or almost articulating it and saying is as it is. And I think you said in the previous book talk about when you talk about fear is that the reason fear is so scary is because it seems to be shapeless, right? So it's like there, like you're in a dark room. But once you accept it and once you put words to it, it's okay, it's a scratch on my car. Right? So it suddenly actually that bravery broke down that massive existence, which was an illusion anyway, to the truth, right? To what it is. And then I love how you say it's brave because it's probably the bravest thing. But people somehow misunderstand it as if this is something that you're trying to avoid it or run away from it.
That's correct. Because they think acceptance means you don't do anything about it. Acceptance does not mean that. You do something about it. The first thing you do is say, this is reality. I have an obligation to accept reality. We're the highest species on the freaking planet. You understand that? Darwin says it's called adaptability, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. The highest species is the ability to adapt to your environment. Well, your environment was just somebody said something. Your environment is that car got scratched. That's your environment. Can you adapt? Now, if your car's scratched, you first settle down. That happened. The car got scratched. That doesn't mean you don't try to find out who did it. That doesn't mean you don't call the police. I don't know it's your business what you do. But you don't do it because you don't do it as a reaction to the fact that I can't accept it. I'm so upset about it, I'm calling the police. You understand it? I'm going to sue. People say it. You said it to me, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you for everything you're worth. That may be the stupidest thing you ever said in the entire life. It may cause so much trouble that it wasn't even worth your scratch on your stupid car, right or wrong. If you stay centered and you catch on, okay, this happened. Can I handle it? Yes, I can handle it. That should be the highest mantra, right? I can handle this. I can handle this. Why?
Yeah.
What's the alternative? I can't handle it. It makes me laugh, right? If you can't handle it, you're in big trouble. And you know you are. You'll keep it for the rest of your life. You'll be bothered by it. You hate people. You hear me? Because you couldn't handle it. If you handle it, now you deal with it. So acceptance does not mean that you don't handle it. And surrender doesn't mean, no, people totally misunderstand surrender. Surrender means I let go of the part of me that can't handle what happened. That's what I'm surrendering. I'm not surrendering that I don't deal with what happened, but if I can't deal with the part of me that's having trouble with what happened, I'm going to try to make it not have happened. I'm going to try and puke all over it. Do you understand that? All right.
Yeah.
But surrender is about letting go of you, right? Then
Yeah.
dealing with things. So surrender, acceptance are the same.
Right.
All right.
Right. I think you have one thing that really touched me very deeply. It's a very small thing you mentioned in the passing, but it's very profound. Is about ability to fly. You talked about how human beings manage to fly, right? You know, you think about it, it's like a marvelous deed that we're able to, but it's really coming from the first acceptance or surrender that we can fly.
Gravity. That's right.
Right?
You have
Like,
to accept it. You have to accept the law of gravity in
yeah.
order to learn how to go above it.
Right.
If you don't accept there's gravity, you're not going to learn to fly. But by accepting gravity and studying gravity, you can learn to work on higher things. That is true of everything. Everything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, indeed, because I think there's, you know, as you and I talked about last time I was in Temple of Universe, there's so much, you know, things people feel I can't change, like, you know, socially, politically, and all that. So like I think the first reaction, people want to escape, right? I don't want to be in the system anymore. But of course there is a sense like I want the system to change, but it's so hard because it's like, okay, this is so evil. But you know, when I read your book again, or when that fly thing comes out, I was like, that's exactly how we figure out how to fly. Right? Like, yeah, I know we're very heavy, but if we can't deny the fact that, okay, we have gravity, you cannot hope that, you know, if I didn't have gravity, if I live in a world with no gravity, I would be free. That's self-deception. But it's actually working with understanding the system, how it became what it is, and that's ultimately the path to freedom, right?
The main point is it's true of everything. It's true of the fact you're not getting along with your husband. It's true of the fact that your kid got in trouble at school. It's true with every single thing. Like, it's true that you got sick, you're diagnosed, right? You have to start by saying, of course, my ego, my little self, has trouble with this. Okay? But that's not the highest being that I am. I have to come from the highest place. Here, I'm going to throw a tantrum. I don't like gravity. I want to fly. The bird flies. I don't like gravity. It's not going to do anything, right? But to stop and quiet down and say, okay, quiet down. Do you accept that there's gravity? Do you accept that your husband did this? You accept your wife did that? Only accept means accept that it happened, right? Now, are you clear enough to see what's the best path to deal with this? It's not necessary to throw pots and pans all over the place, right? Or immediately ask for a divorce. That may not be the best thing to do. Or threaten. If you threaten to leave me 15 times, okay. It's like, right? You're just going out of your reactions. You haven't accepted. Once you accept the reality, now you look clearly, but it doesn't mean you're not comfortable. Like, there's things that we have an ego. We have an ego. You have to be able to accept that, not get rid of it. You have to accept you have an ego. It's a sum of your learned experiences. You got one. Tag, you're it. Now what do I do? Quiet down, relax, get quiet, understand the ego, where it came from, have compassion for it. Don't deny it. Don't suppress it, right? But don't let it run your life, because you're higher than that. So the fact that you can't handle the sight of blood, I hope you can get above that if I'm bleeding. Come on, you can do it, right? But you don't deny that you're having trouble. You accept that you're having trouble. See it? Every bit of it is the greatest you can accept everything that's going on, then you can deal with it better.
Yeah, yeah, so beautifully said. There are two last questions. The one of them I think is very deep. It's beautifully you have written about the heart, because we talk about the outside world, the thought, and then the heart, and then you know, I guess also through reading you as first read, like, how do you have this title called what opens your heart? Yeah, tell us something like, how do we understand our heart? Because that seems to be harder to understand even than quantum physics.
Yes. Well said. The one thing we haven't talked about, which we'll do it very quickly, is what happens is when we have experiences that we don't like, we suppress them, just like Freud said, right? Now, suppression is a psychological problem, repression, suppression. I just call it resistance. How about that? We resist the experience we're having, correct? When you resist it, that's you in there pushing it away. You do push things away in there, don't you? Okay. Where do you think it goes? When you push things away, they're energy.
Yes,
They get
stored.
locked inside your energy system, your
Yep.
heart, your mind. These are energies, all right? When you push them away, they create blockages. Yoga calls them scars. It creates blockages. Those blockages stay in your whole life. Psychology will tell you that. You know, took your blanket away too soon. Your mother did this, right? And you got all this junk in there for 30 years, right? There's not supposed to be in there. You're supposed to have an experience. When it's over, it's gone. If it's gone outside, it's gone inside. But that's not what we do. We store all this stuff in here. What our heart is, the emotions and things from our heart, is the very deep spiritual energy, the Shakti, the spirit, call it whatever you want, the beautiful energy I talked about earlier, trying to come up. It's always trying to feed you and to come up. It's hitting those blockages. And just like when water hits a rock, it creates eddies and currents and all kinds of things, right? That's what happens to the beautiful spiritual energy when it's trying to come up. It hits these blockages and shoots out as fear and hate and jealousy and insecurity and you know, momentary love and passion, right? It just, the energy shoots out, right? That's what your heart is. Your heart is the place from which that energy shoots out. There's a higher heart. When the energy is able to get past your blockages, you move into what's called the spiritual heart. That heart is always open. That heart takes the energy and feels love all the time, no matter what happens. All right. So there's two different layers of the heart, the personal heart and the spiritual heart. But people understand that's what the heart is, right? They get so caught up in their emotions and they act emotionally and rather than understanding. If you said something, I once was with somebody and they said, you know we don't talk about that around your father. My father's a grown man. We're talking about something that happened 20 years ago. What do you mean we don't talk about that around my father? He can't handle it. You understand that? It wasn't my fault. But he can't handle it. In other words, just the thought of it hit his stuff that he didn't handle 20 years ago. And it caused such disturbance inside that now we're saying nobody can talk about it. How about he get rid of that? That's spirituality. That's what you can do with your heart. You can get rid of those blockages so that the energy is free to come up and feed you all the time. It comes up all the time. It's just you're fed with love all the time.
Yeah.
All right. Love is something you express, not something you need, not something you do something to get. It's always there, but you're distracted by your blockages. So we talked about 15 seconds. You just talked about the deepest subject there is. Why is the heart the way it is? Now you understand?
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
You store that garbage in there. And now you lay the groundwork for how to get out. One, stop storing more. Don't tell me you have to go down to everything you ever suppressed. You know, oh my God. No, learn to stop storing things. And then you'll learn how to let them go when they come back up. Now, when they come back up, you push them back down. Don't talk about that. You know, I don't like that. You know, I can't handle that. Right? In other words, I'm protecting the stuff I stored inside because you don't know how to deal with it. And that's fine. Learn how to deal with it. How? By waking up in the morning. Here's the spiritual teaching. You wake up in the morning, breathe a little bit, and remind yourself, the purpose of this day is a game I'm playing with myself. I'm going to go through this day without storing more garbage. And you watch at different times of the day. Did I handle what Joe said? Did I handle what the boss said? Did I handle it rain when I had to get out of the car? Did I handle the driver in front of me that was driving slow and I wanted? They didn't even use their blinker. Can I handle the fact that I got every red light all the way into town? Oh, what's wrong with me? Why did God do that? In other words, why can't you handle these simple little things that I always say? Oh, when Oprah interviewed me in this book, right? She said her favorite line of the book was, the moment in front of you is not bothering you. You're bothering yourself about the moment in front of you. The car in front of you is not bothering you. The weather's not bothering you. You're bothering yourself because it doesn't match what you want. Start letting go of those. How? Relax and release. R&R. You just, when it starts getting tight, relax. But it won't relax. Some people say, but it won't relax. It's the ego won't relax. I didn't ask the ego to relax. I asked you to relax in the face of the ego, in the face of I don't like the rain and blah, blah, blah. You just keep relaxing. And what will happen is you'll learn how to do that. They're around me from all over the world. Oh, it changed my life. Of course it did. You've been busy fighting everything because it doesn't match you. How about learning to let go of you a little bit? All right. And the next thing you know, you're not fighting with these little things, low hanging fruit. And then you
Yep.
learned how to do it. It's like learn how to play tennis or learn how to play the piano. Now you're better at it. And what will
Yep.
happen is stuff will start coming up naturally. You don't have to do it. It'll come up. All right. And you learn to practice letting that go. Then that
Yep.
go. And little by little, you get stronger and more capable of letting go of this garbage that you stored inside of yourself.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, thank you for answering my last question already. That's exactly what I want you to say, because so beautifully towards the last part of the book, when you talk about those low-hanging fruits and things you can do. And I like how you this line, I'm sure is not in the book, but you say it's a game I'm playing today.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
It's
And then at
Yeah.
night, if you did the morning that way and you check on yourself a few times, and then at night you sit down and say, how did I do?
Mhm.
Do I still have stuff in here from what somebody that I burped in the elevator, right? Do I still have stuff in there, right? And you practice letting go. You're not going to be perfect. Doesn't matter. It's a game. It's a video game you're playing with yourself. But you will get better. If you practice anything, you get better at it, don't you?
Yeah.
Anything. All right?
Yeah.
You will get better at letting go. You'll
Yeah.
get better accepting reality. And all of a sudden, you start feeling happier all the time. Why? Because you're not causing yourself to not be happy. I don't think you can seek. Well, all right. We'll finish off with this. I know you love Rumi. Okay. Rumi said, it is not for you to seek love. It is for you to seek, find, and remove the obstacles you have put into place. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm teaching you. Love is always there.
Yeah.
There's no looking for it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Remove the reason that it's blocked. You
Yeah.
put those reasons in there. Be
Yeah.
willing to let them go.
Yeah, indeed. At the end of the day, as you said, beautiful. It's like I think you have that wording as third. It's like life is like a spring water coming out, and you need to take away the rocks on it, and so you don't need to seek the water. The water is inside. You have a huge fountain with unlimited love coming out, and seeing that. Well, Michael, thank you so much again for this beautiful sharing. And I'm looking forward to more and more people in China or who can read Chinese to read your book. And I'm looking forward, I don't have it yet, but I'm looking forward to receiving the Chinese version. And I'm sure it's, again, another beautiful work. And thank you again so much for doing your work, so that your spring of love keep coming out, and so we can benefit from it. Thank you so much again, Michael.
Thank you. And I thank you, for helping the books get out there into China. The people, we're having more and more visits from China. Last week, somebody flew straight from Beijing, spent 3 days, and flew back. Oh my God! Right? And it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful, right? So thank you for helping people understand these deep teachings, because this is how you bring peace to the world. Like the world's a mess, we know that. One person at a time, you straighten up yourself, you'll start spreading light everywhere. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I know
Thank
there are
you,
we look forward to more opportunities to talk with you.
Okay. Okay,
All right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael. You have a good night's sleep, okay? And
Okay.
keep playing your game.